Lottery tickets and fan clubs are two fascinating things present in the Seiyu industry. In a way, as a professional marketer myself, I love how crafty marketing teams working for Seiyu, or even Seiyu artists, their talent agencies or music labels are, in terms of working towards finding creative ways to earn the most money they can. As a fan though, both are things I do not enjoy, and their increasing presence in the Seiyu industry ends up putting aside a lot of fans that do not have financial means to support the ones they love, when in the past that content that is now gated as members only was always available for everyone to see and follow. In this episode, let's talk a bit about lottery tickets, what they consist of, how those artificially manipulate fan base numbers, as well as an interesting case study about 2D music projects' well-known voting slips. Let's kick off this episode of Seiyu Lounge. Welcome to Seiyu Lounge, I am your host Vanessa, and today's topic is Lottery Tickets and Fan Clubs, Survival of the Richest, Part 1. This episode is here thanks to the suggestions by commenters PM and Denise. Commenter PM mentioned on episode 10 that this might be impossible given how it is the norm in Japan, but anyway, I want those lottery tickets to be gone for any events or such. Also, I think fan clubs are being a thing for 2D franchises. I know Hip Mike has one now recently. This fan club thing is kind of related to the lottery thing, I just don't know how to express my thoughts on that for now. And commenter Denise mentioned on episode 4 that I don't know if you ever made an episode about Seiyu fan club, but I'm very curious to know how can a fan club help a Seiyu's career. And super popular Seiyus have on average how many fans in their fan club. Thank you so much to PM and Denise for putting those topics in the spotlight. Seeing how lottery tickets have been a thing for decades in Japan and extended to Seiyu artists or even anime events, this is a good time to talk to you about the business side of it, as well as its implications on the fan side. This may end up being a complex episode, so if you find yourself not understanding some of the concepts, I'll still try to explain those in the simplest way possible for everyone to be able to follow the episode well. Don't hesitate to leave a comment on YouTube so that I can help you out. Well, first off, we need to understand the context. So let's talk about fan culture in Japan. Japan is wildly known for having passionate music fans. You see that in how supportive they are of musicians of all backgrounds and performing a wide variety of music genres. I firsthand experienced fan culture in Japan when I attended The Gazette's live show in September 2019 at Yokohama Arena. I was expecting a couple of people donning black clothes, perhaps some eccentric makeup to match the band's visuals, but what I saw was completely different and incredibly refreshing. Fans were cosplaying band members, they were singing songs while perfectly capturing the style and tone of the vocals, they put effort into their get-up and were hanging out within fan club members. Everything was neatly organized within the fan base. I noticed the difference when me and other international fans were hanging out, as fans from outside of Japan usually do at music festivals or shows. Small talk about where everyone had come from. Some of us were wearing t-shirts from rock bands that had nothing to do with the artist, and while you could say we were passionate, some of us had flown over from Australia, Hawaii, Russia and Macau. The latter is my situation, as I was back then on vacation before ending my year living and working in Asia. But our passion as fans of the Gazette paled in comparison with Japanese fans. They were feeling the band way deeper than us. It's weird to explain, but that's what it felt like. Fan engagement is a phenomena that is deeply rooted in the sense of being Japanese. As a Japanese person, you want to be part of the things collectively, but are also extremely competitive within those collectives or groups. Yes, Japanese fans are intense in their passion for the groups or artists they love. Japanese fan strives to be the biggest fan possible. And that's a big part of their competitive culture. And that competitiveness shows in Japanese fans wanting to be the biggest fans of them all. That includes purchasing all the exclusive merchandise, being on a queue for hours just for a handshake event, purchasing entire first press editions of anime DVDs just to get the opportunity to earn VIP seat tickets for an event, hanging out with only fans of the fan clubs they are a part of, or sending monetary gifts to their favorite idols, artists, seiyuu, and competing with other fans on that matter when those aren't even asked by the idols, artists, or seiyuu themselves. That sounds crazy from a foreigner standpoint, however, if you look to nearby South Korea or China, Japan is actually pretty tame when it comes to fan culture and the competitiveness within fan bases. In a way, Japan's competitiveness and fan culture are a big reason why streaming services, although gaining some importance in recent years, are still not that loved by fans of artists or seiyuu. If the music is available for everyone for free, where is that sense of competitiveness within a fan base? Of being the best fan you can be by having all the exclusive things? There isn't. And I believe that is a big reason why streaming will still be there, but in the grander scheme of things, it will not have that much importance for Japanese fans in the coming years. Streaming sounds more like a way to reach a wider audience, basically us, the international fans. Fan culture in Japan still heavily relies on earning bonuses for purchasing first press editions, having access to merchandise, and the sort. What are lottery tickets and voting slips? If you ever purchased a first press edition of a CD by male seiyuu, and even by some 2D music projects, you may have noticed that inside the booklet, there's always one square white page with a code and a website to go to. That is what you call a lottery ticket or a voting slip, depending on the contents written on it. Seiyuu artists usually add those to their first press editions, and it's usually a lottery to win signed merchandise or to try to get a seat at the release or meet and greet event that will be held a couple of weeks from the CD release. If it's a 2D music project, it's most likely that square white page has a code and website link. That's because they'll probably be hosting a voting like Hypnosis Mike's Division Rap Battle series or Paradox Live's Stage Battle series. Lottery and voting slips were popularized as a marketing gimmick through the Japanese idol group AKB48. The group holds yearly votings to decide who their center member will be for the coming year, and that means that the single that is released with those voting slips will sell like hotcakes. And it does. Seeing how the marketing gimmick worked so well for that group, it started to be widely used for all artists in Japan, and that includes as well seiyuu artists and even 2D music projects. You want to boost sales and capitalize on Japanese fans' competitiveness? You add a voting or lottery slip to the first press editions of that CD or DVD. What do artists win by having voting or lottery slips within their CDs? As you can tell by now, by adding voting or lottery slips to their CDs, artists assure that their sales numbers rise, thus aiming to rank within Oricon Weekly's top spots. And music labels and artists may earn a lot of money, depending on how passionate their fan base is. From a business standpoint, if an artist has a substantial fan base, both voting and lottery slips are an excellent way to boost their revenue. For example, for new seiyuu artists, adding one of the two is usually made to reward the few fans that are around, and with a sense of competitiveness in the mix, probably entice other people to join in, follow the artist, purchase their music, just to have a chance at winning something. Thus, from a business standpoint, voting and lottery slips are the holy grail strategy to boost sales and earn a lot of money. By adding voting slips to CDs, music labels are feeding off the needs and wants of the fans. fans want to feel exclusive. They want to have power in deciding things. By adding lottery slips to CDs, music labels attach an exclusive aura to the artists, as those events or merch are really limited and special, and simultaneously feeding off the needs and wants of fans by making them feel lucky, exclusive, or loved for getting among thousands of fans that exclusive bonus. The issues that come with lottery or voting slips. While lottery or voting slips seem like the perfect balance between artists earning money for their work and fans having their needs satisfied, there are actually a couple of issues that come with it. First off, streaming will continue to be put in the backseat. Like I mentioned before, one of the reasons why streaming isn't bigger in Japan is because of its fan culture. Fans want to feel exclusive. Streaming does not give them that feeling, and artists want to earn a lot of money. Streaming pays them peanuts. So we can all agree streaming is not appealing to both sides of the equation. Fans want to have artist-related collectibles and owning all CDs their favorite artists release. And for as long as voting and lottery slips are added to physical CDs, offering unique fan opportunities to meet, watch from up close, or even get access to something exclusive, streaming will continue to not be a priority for music labels and their artists. Of course, this applies to Seiyu. That's one of the reasons why some Seiyu do not have their music on streaming platforms, or part of their repertoire, to ensure fans actually purchase the physical CDs that are missing. The fans will feel exclusive and the Seiyu artist will get more money than they could make through streaming. What does this mean for international fans? Some Seiyu artists and 2D groups will have their music available on streaming platforms, but that won't be universal. There will always be artists that will delay streaming availability of their CDs for years until physical CDs stop being purchased and they finally decide to make the music available on streaming platforms. Then there are the others that adapt themselves and actually want to reach not only the domestic but international markets, and thus fan bases, and aim for more of their music having simultaneous releases worldwide. A note that Seiyu artists that are no longer active may never get their music available on streaming platforms. Why? Because the contract signed between the Seiyu and music label didn't contemplate streaming platforms as a licensed distribution outlet for their music. And since the Seiyu artist is no longer active or left that music label, the music label may own the rights to the music, but should they choose to license it to make it available on streaming platforms, they'll have to pay royalties to that Seiyu that is no longer working under them. You can understand that music labels don't want to be paying money to those that no longer work with them, so... Well, that's a big reason why music by Takuya Sato or Yuki Ono, when he was signed to Lantis, is not available on streaming platforms and quite possibly will never be. But I've already derailed a bit our conversation about the issues that come with lottery or voting slips. The first one is streaming being put in the backseat. Next one is artificial sales boosting and misleading representation of a fan base. As you may have noticed, lottery or voting slips are ways to tamper with sales numbers, artificially boosting sales when the fan base for that artist and/or 2D music project is actually rather small in comparison with those sales numbers. That's not frowned upon, yet it doesn't feel right, especially if you're not analyzing the situation from the music label side, but from the artist's side. Let's check how this works from a business perspective. Follow me on this one. Lottery slips are something used to boost physical CD sales. In a way, music industry specialists have pointed out this as the reason why physical CDs haven't died as a medium in Japan like they did in Europe, the US, basically every other place in the world. And as I've said before, it makes sense culturally that CDs still thrive in Japan. But there's a problem when you enclose a lottery slip or, let's say, a ticket to an online voting in a physical CD. Passionate fans, some borderline fanatical, start purchasing those CDs like crazy. It's not 1 or 2, it's 10, 20, 30 CDs. So far so good, a lot of money for your company. But then the bad things start to show. For example, do 50,000 CDs sold, in which at least more than half accounts to second or third time purchases by some fans, have any value? When you have a company, you sure want to sell. That's natural, you're in the game to make money. From a business standpoint, yes, it has a lot of value. Music labels only care about money. 50,000 CDs sold is more than 1 million euros or dollars, so yeah, they value those sales regardless if 50,000 fans purchased those CDs or if 1,000 fans purchased all those CDs. But is the 2D music project or Seiyu artist genuinely popular, or are we getting a misleading display of popularity off of those 50,000 CDs sold? Yes, it's a massive feat, but you want to achieve it naturally, not in this artificial way. Naturally will mean that the artist or 2D music project is popular. Artificially will mean that it's sporadic popularity. There's a reason fan clubs do not unveil their numbers. One of those reasons is because there is a massive discrepancy between sales and registered fans. Remember, when there are tickets or serial codes for votings, you risk displaying ridiculous high numbers of fans when in reality your project has exactly the same number of fans as all those projects that really didn't bother with making those campaigns. Yes, it's a marketing gimmick. Yes, it works really well with 2D music projects with passionate fan bases. But those numbers are a misleading representation of the fanbase numbers or how popular the project or artist really is. Then let me ask you, is there any value in a person purchasing 40 copies of a CD to try to get a golden ticket or increase chances of scoring something from the lottery? Most of the times, in Japan, fans do purchase insane amounts of physical CDs, take the codes or golden tickets or serial numbers, and put all other copies but one in the trash. You heard it well, it happens commonly with CDs by AKB48. When it comes to Seiyu artists and 2D group CDs, you'll see those next day available for auction at half the retail price, making those 2D groups or artists lose money that they could get if people didn't resort to purchasing used versions of their recently released CDs. In this case, when it comes to counting the copies sold for Oricon's charts, the franchise sold 40 copies. But how many fans do those 40 copies represent? 1. Notice how sales numbers can be misleading in terms of how big a fan base is. Then we have the fact that fans are unable to support a project. Being a fan that actively purchases physical CDs is an insanely expensive hobby. And perhaps most of you feel this. It's really expensive to purchase CDs, so you prefer to stream. That's the sound thing to do, especially if you are short on money. Aside from the financial side of the issue, it also seems like music labels do not understand that most fans of 2D music projects are teenagers or younger. Most of them can't or aren't able to purchase those CDs, especially if it involves importing them and paying customs taxes for that. Gating votings behind the purchase of CDs alienates a big chunk of the fan base that can't take part on that fun community activity. And while this may seem like nothing compared to the reasons I mentioned previously, for some fans, participating is part of the joy of being in a fandom. If they can't participate because the 2D music project says voting is only possible if you purchase a CD, I can bet that is incredibly frustrating and may be a reason why some people prefer to casually follow a project as opposed to joining a fanbase. A brief case study. Hypnosis Mic and Paradox Live's approach to voting slips. For purposes of better understanding all this I just said, let me compare how two popular 2D music projects using voting slips enclosed in their CDs and of exactly the same music genre are working in completely different ways and thus having completely different results. Hipgnosis Mic and Paradox Live have been two of the most exciting 2D music projects to launch in recent years. Hip-hop music is at center stage, both projects have a star-studded lineup, and there are legendary artists producing the songs, not to mention massive marketing teams behind each project. I'm a big fan of the music from both projects and have been following closely how their respective music labels incorporate aspects of Japan's fan culture while having an international approach. I can safely say that the results are pretty interesting. Please note that this is only a comparison and analysis of sales strategies and their scope, not of the quality or importance of any of the projects. Hipgnosis Mic encloses voting slips with their first press editions of CDs in the Division Rap Battle series. Fans can only vote if they purchase a physical CD, and those codes work as well for foreign fans. The sales numbers for each CD within the 2 seasons of the Division Rap Battle series have gold record certifications, which is to say 100,000 copies. When the Hipgnosis Mic franchise releases a CD without voting slips enclosed, for example the Before the DRB entries, those CD sales drop to an average of 30,000 copies in its first week. Paradox Live has hosted a year-long Battle Season CD series. Fans could vote with the codes enclosed in the physical CDs, as well as through hashtags on Twitter, special merch, and daily votings on the website. Foreign fans could participate in all of these, and most of those actions to determine the winners in each CD were free. As a result of a spread-out strategy that didn't focus solely on having people purchasing CDs, the franchise sold on average 15,000 copies per CD in the first week. Notice how King Records' or Evil Line Records' strategy for Hipgnosis Mic is all about boosting physical sales, topping charts, and being on the news because of that. That's an interesting strategy that, well implemented, like King Records usually does, will make their projects and artists popular in the long run. Even if the voting slips are the main reason the sales numbers are ridiculously high for specific CD collections, the free press they get for topping the charts will eventually make those once ridiculous numbers in which there's one fan purchasing multiple CDs slowly turn into individual fans purchasing one CD. However, the difference between the 100,000 CDs sold with a voting slip enclosed and the average of 30,000 CDs sold without a voting slip gives away that the franchise may seem like it has a bigger fan base than it actually has. At least a fan base that is willing to pay for the music. And notice how Avex, one of the 3 most important music labels in Japan, has a different approach. Instead of physical sales only, they want to focus on a sense of community, on fan culture. Even if you don't have money and want to participate, you can. Voting is not locked behind purchasing a CD, and thus you get a completely different result. It's not as common for fans to purchase multiple CDs in the Paradox Live franchise, because having the right to vote and participate in decision-making is for everyone. Those who like to purchase CDs do it and have an extra opportunity to vote with the voting slip enclosed. Those who don't like to purchase CDs and prefer streaming can still participate for free in 3 different types of voting. As far as making money goes, Avex may lose some potential additional revenue for not making voting through serial code the only voting method. However, the project gets a better image among fans for not being as salesy and not making it difficult to join the fun of deciding who wins. I could pick any other 2D music projects of the same style, and depending on the music label, you'd get a variation of these 2 strategies. These work in different ways, suiting the vibe that each music label wants for their projects. If the focus is on making money, making the best out of the popularity wave, enclosing voting slips in CDs, and making that the only voting method maximizes earnings. If the focus is on creating a sense of community regardless of the fans' financial availabilities, you can mix and match, usually by having voting slips complemented by other ways of voting. What I can take from here is that King Records' Evil Line Records' strategy follows what I talked about earlier. The focus is on fan culture in Japan. The way the voting works is specifically tailored for the Japanese part of the fan base, not so much the international side. Remember, Japanese fans are incredibly passionate, competitive, and want to be the best fans ever of whichever project or artist they love. Also, remember that not all international fans have the money to import CDs from Japan, much less in bulk. I can only imagine the customs fees. So Hipgnosis Mic's strategy is obviously steered towards the domestic market, not the international market, although they have a passionate international fan base. And you can already tell that Avex's strategy is focused on the international market. Yes, this is the same music label that is embargoing physical CD sales to overseas fans. Although there's still the physical CD with an enclosed serial code to participate in the voting, there are 3 free ways in which fans can vote. Twitter reach through hashtags, voting daily on a website, and streaming on AWA, which has a free 30-day trial so fans can still get points to vote through there without paying a cent. Avex's strategy is novel when it comes to the focus in 2D music projects, and it may have been born out of observing how the Hipgnosis Mic fanbase works and what it consists of. Noticing that international fans are a thing, their strategy includes them in the equation from the get-go. I'm curious to see how this marketing strategy ends up influencing the longevity of the project, but so far, so good. This was a brief look at what lottery tickets end up doing to and for franchises or seiyuu artists. As far as interesting yet complex themes about fan culture and seiyuu go, this is right up there at the top. In one way, you want your favorite seiyuu artists and 2D music projects to be successful. You want them to stay on top. Yet at the same time, it is frustrating that the possibility to participate and be involved within a fanbase ends up being a question of, do you have money to purchase a CD with a voting ticket or not? I focused on the voting slips with serial codes because for international fans, the serial codes that come to participate in signed merch lotteries are not open to those outside of Japan. So unless you have a friend in Japan that can help you out, those lottery slips will not be of any value to you. That is a pity though, as you notice both male seiyuu artists and 2D music projects having bigger international fan bases, yet the possibility of winning something signed by their idols is not possible, because the lottery was only thought for the domestic fans of that seiyuu artist or 2D music project. Of this episode, I want you to understand the business side behind the voting lottery slips marketing gimmick. It is a simple gimmick at its core that, allied with some psychology notions, makes it really easy to sway people into purchasing something. Those voting slips artificially boost sales numbers. Know that you can't say that because an artist or 2D music project sells 30,000 copies that they have 30,000 fans. You have always to start from thinking that maybe half of those copies are one-off purchases by individual fans. Then you have to think that among those purchases, some may have been just a result of curiosity, and the person that purchased may not even be a fan and not purchase anything else that artist or 2D music project releases from then on. CD sales to overseas fans are not counted for charting on Oricon or Billboard Japan's charts. So you also aren't counting those if you claim that the sales numbers reflect how big or small is a fan base. Sales numbers are a misleading, unrealistic way to assess how big is a fan base for a project or artist. It tells you that they have a passionate fan base, in case those sales numbers are high, or that the fan base is a bit on the quiet side, hence the low sales numbers. It doesn't tell you how many fans a Seiyu artist or 2D music project has. Now tell me, what do you think about 2D music projects locking fan participation behind the purchase of CDs? What do you think about Seiyu artists enclosing codes for lotteries in the first press editions of their CDs? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss the Hand That Feeds HQ's weekly Mail Seiyu and music-related content, hit the subscribe button. I'll return next week with another episode of Seiyu Lounge. Thank you for listening, and see you guys around.